What's more, I've asked my Attorney General to start a review of the overuse of solitary confinement across American prisons. The social science shows that an environment like that is often more likely to make inmates more alienated, more hostile, potentially more violent. Do we really think it makes sense to lock so many people alone in tiny cells for 23 hours a day for months, sometimes for years at a time? That is not going to make us safer.
The correction system is one of the most overlooked, misunderstood institutions, functions that we have in our entire government.
Solitary confinement. During my first hours of incarceration, warnings about solitary or the SHU came from both prisoners and staff very quickly, and very minor infractions could send you to the SHU. They can then keep you there as long as they want under whatever conditions they choose.
Solitary confinement literally drives men mad. This idea of total incarceration just isn't working.
But I think it's a question of when someone goes into prison, what's the point of them being in prison? Is it to punish them, or is it to rehabilitate them and get them better? So if they are going to be released from prison, they're not going back into prison for making the same mistake. Been done with basically calorie deprivation. So people would argue like food is a need that needs to be met. Some people would say contact and comfort is also a need that needs to be met. So in this study, what they did is they took men and they only fed them a limited amount of calories. So they looked at how much calories on average are they consuming each day and then cut that in half. And they were isolated, and what happened is because they were not given that food, they became obsessed with food. So the men would all be watching like a movie together in a room because they kept them all living together. And the movie may be a comedy and nobody was laughing, but they would pay attention to, oh my God, you see that fruit basket in the back of the kitchen in the first scene? Oh my God, did you see that guy was going to lunch? All they could talk about was food. And then eventually their family members could visit them, and some of the men had girlfriends and wives, and they had the option to, go in a room and be intimate with them, and they didn't want that. All they wanted to do was talk about food and find out if they brought them food. So I think if you're put into isolation, similar to that experiment when you don't get food, then all you can think about is that comfort, and eventually it starts to make you break down.
And we are placing individuals in restrictive housing, that we are maintaining the highest level of quality care relative to their physical as well as mental health.
In this clip, Charles Samuels states that a prisoner in solitary confinement is getting quality care, but in a small standard 6x4 solitary room, a prisoner clearly does not get this quality care. Their basic needs are not being met. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows that the one basic need is psychological. In a restrictive housing unit, a prisoner's basic psychological needs are not being cared for, and therefore prisoners are not receiving the necessary care that is required for them to get better and become functioning members of society.
If your basic needs are not met, whether it's food, whether it's, contact with another person, that obviously mentally you can start to fall apart.
Care about solitary confinement because it will not help inmates become better people for when they are released from prison and re-enter society. Solitary confinement often worsens behavior and is a cruel and unusual punishment. Prisoners are denied basic human rights and are left to rot away in a cell 23 hours a day for weeks, months, or even years. While solitary confinement exists in our world, we as a society are not safer.